From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour, starring Tom Sherwood and co-starring Vance. I'm Kojo Nnamdi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom, welcome.
I'm happy to be here, but I'm not used to sharing the co-analysis spot with someone like Jim Vance.
You ought to be lucky we decided to retain you, given that Jim Vance is coming into the studio. You almost got dropped from the team because of our guest analyst. He is Jim Vance. He's a news anchor for NBC4. Vance, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Coach. Always good to be with you, man. I don't know about analysis because I'm not so good at that, but I have been known to speak my mind from time to time, so I'm happy to have another opportunity to do so. Coach.
Remember when he used to write his own analyses and commentaries on the air?
You that old? You remember that?
There was that time. Also joining us in studio is Ralph Northam. He is the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. He's a Democrat. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Coach. It's a pleasure to be here.
If you have questions or comments for Ralph Northam, you can start calling now, 800-433-8850, or send email to kojo@wmu.org. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream of this conversation there. Also, ask a question or make comments. The big news today, of course, is that the Supreme Court has ruled that the states may no longer reserve the right to marriage only for heterosexual couples, that same-sex couples can be allowed to marry no matter what state they live in. Tom, one gets the impression that this is an issue that for the past several years simply has had a great deal of momentum. It's a train that's been rolling, and now it's not going to be stopped.
Well, it's an issue that has percolated in terms of rights for gay people, LGBT people, for decades, but the marriage thing has been more recent. It has been a remarkable change with both the states and the city of Washington, which voted to change the law, and then federal courts made 30-something states change the law, and now the Supreme Court has clarified the dignity of all individuals. It's a huge 5-4 decision. There'll be a lot of angst over this, just as it has been over Roe v. Wade and other things, but huge decision for America.
Jim, this is a court of law and not the court of public opinion, but one gets the impression that the wave of public opinion on same-sex marriage has been moving so rapidly over the past few years that there was little doubt in my mind that the Supreme Court, even though by a narrow majority, would approve this thing.
I can't say there was no doubt in my mind, Kojo, but I must say that I am thrilled that they did vote the way that they did. I think it was the right move. I am curious, though, now about how some of the promises of resistance will be carried out, because already there are members of legislatures and others who are stating that they're not going to take this lying down, so to speak. And I couldn't help but reflect as I was driving in here today and listening to the radio on, I don't know if it's Casey Stengel or Yogi, whichever one, was like deja vu all over again, because I'm recalling the 50s and the 60s and the declarations that we will not yield to the civil rights legislation that was enacted at the time. I think it's an exciting time. May I also note that regretfully, once again, Clarence Thomas, who is apparently going to have a legacy of, in his whole career on the Supreme Court, coming down on the wrong side of history. And I'll leave that at that.
And in this case, coming down in the minority that voted against this decision. He was also in the minority that this week voted against Obamacare. So yes, you are right. He's going
the resistance that Jim speaks about. There's already some discussions amongst state legislators that there'll be religious freedom laws, or that's what they're calling them, that would allow a government employee whose religion says that they can't recognize same-sex marriages to simply not do them. But I think the state interest here would be that if you're a government employee and you can't do the job of the state employee, perhaps you shouldn't be the state employee.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, Vance mentioned that there are some people in state legislatures which will fiercely oppose this. I suspect yours, the Virginia General Assembly, is going to see some opposition to this. How do you think this will move forward in your state?
Well, thank you, Kojo. And this I agree with Jim. And And Tom, this is a great day for our country. It's certainly a great day for Virginia. It was a long time coming. The ruling has come down. I think they're speaking on behalf of certainly the majority of the people. And I can just tell you in Virginia, our emphasis is on economic development. And, any business person will tell you that in order to be successful, you have to have your doors open. And we obviously live in a very diverse society. So we need to welcome and always have welcomed all folks to Virginia. I suspect the answer to your question, there will be some resistance, but, I think the majority will speak in Virginia, well over 50%. And if our current representatives don't move forward with this, then perhaps they won't be reelected. And I hope that's what happens.
Governor Northam, this is a political year for Virginia. All 40 seats in the state Senate are up. You preside over the state Senate. There are considered maybe 10 competitive seats in this fall. What do you think this ruling will do, including Obamacare? The state has foregone nearly $2 billion a year in federal funds for Obamacare by not going along with the program. How much of how much politics will there be for same-sex marriage in the elections this fall?
Well, again, a great question. I think there's a tremendous amount of momentum right now for marriage equality, and also, as you just mentioned, for health care. I think there's a lot of emphasis will be put on moving forward with the Medicaid expansion. We have over 400,000 working Virginians who don't have coverage right now. So we have some very competitive seats in the Senate. As you said, there are 40 races, 19 Democrats, 21 Republicans right now. And we feel very confident. We're working very hard, by the way, to make sure that we're able to take our majority back in November.
And I don't want to put callers on the air yet who don't have calls for the Lieutenant Governor, but I do have to bring this caller's question up because it is really for Vance. Mike in Springfield, Virginia would like comments that this is a great day for equality, and he has a question. Will Vance officiate gay weddings?
You know what? That's a fascinating question. I'll tell you why. Because I have officiated 2 weddings. And I'm thrilled to say that I have done that. I have never been asked by a gay couple to officiate their wedding. If I am asked, I am happy to serve.
Here come the flood of requests.
When the district changed its law to allow same-sex marriages, it also changed the officiant rule that it had to be either a clergy or an elected official. And so the city's law is anyone may officiate at a wedding after paying a $25 fee for the license for that one performance. So yes, you can.
So I'm eligible, if not available.
And if somebody pays a $5 fee
for me, right?
Not going out on a limb that far.
Right.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, the Supreme Court this week upheld another critical piece of the Affordable Care Act. It will allow for subsidies to continue in states that operate on the federal exchange, like Virginia. What was your reaction to this outcome, and where would you like to see this debate go from here when it comes to health care in Virginia? Well,
I applaud the Supreme Court's decision. And, right here in Virginia, about 285,000 have coverage, and we're taking advantage of the subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. If the Supreme Court had ruled the other way, they would have lost their coverage, and that would have been a real predicament. Now our work is, COJO, is with the Medicaid expansion. As I said earlier,
Governor McAuliffe says in the past 24 hours, he's renewed his pitch to expand Medicaid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And 400,000 working, and I would underline the word working, Virginians who don't have coverage. Morally, it's the right thing to do. And, COJO, I think one of the things that listeners need to understand is that from a business perspective, right now, Virginia is giving away about $4.5 million per day to surrounding states who we compete with. So since January of 2014 to now, we have given over $2 billion with a B dollars to surrounding states. And that's money that could be kept in Virginia. We have already paid those taxes to the federal government. All we're asking is to bring them back to Virginia and to help pay for things like education, health care, transportation, first responders, all the things that we talk about that could be helpful with.
When the legislature rejected the governor's plan to do the Medicaid funding, and you forfeited $1.8 billion, I think it is, one of the concerns was that, well, if we go forward with this, and then somehow or another the federal government reduces its commitment, then we'll be stuck paying the bill. What was the answer to that?
Well, that's just a very shallow argument, and we hear that, but we rely on the federal government for a lot of other funding, transportation, education, go right down the list. And the thing again that people need to understand, for the first 3 years, it was 100% funded by the federal government. After that, 90%. Right now it's a 50-50 match. So, right now we're taking 50%. What's wrong with 90%? That, as a business person, that sounds like a great deal to me.
What do you think is the real reason for the opposition from the Republicans?
If
it's not just a matter of dollars and cents.
Tom, there's no question about what the opposition is. It's very clear cut. It's anti-Obama. That's everything they've run on for the last year. And, I just hope people will wake up and realize that, our president's doing a good job. There's some great things about the Affordable Care Act. No more pre-existing conditions, being able to keep your children on the policy till they're 26. They need to realize that good things are happening right now with this administration. Jobs are being brought to this country, and especially to the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we need to move forward.
But given the fact that Republicans have been stonewalling this for the past several years, is there any way you think for the governor to expand Medicaid unilaterally without the General Assembly? I
hope so. Well, no, I think it needs to happen through the General Assembly. And, it may be a matter of semantics, but I think that, if we can perhaps give some of these folks that have argued against it some cover and allow them to realize that, again, this is money that we have sent to Washington, that we're just asking to bring it back to Virginia. We're looking at other avenues that we can do that, and then hopefully we'll be successful in the next year.
And this will be a political issue this fall again.
Absolutely.
800-433-8850. Our guest is Ralph Northam. He is the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Jim Vance is our guest analyst. He's news anchor for NBC4. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Don your headphones, gentlemen, because Katie in Washington, D.C. has a question about this. Katie, you are on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you guys for taking my call. I'm from D.C., but I'm actually originally from Virginia, so it's great to talk to you guys. I'm curious about your opinion on why this decision is able to be made in the judiciary branch, and how you think that sort of breaches the balance of powers between the two branches. Because it seems to me this is just going to be a repeat of Brown v. Board or Roe v. Wade, where the decision was made in the judiciary when it really should have been made in the legislature.
And therefore, do you think there will be resistance in the legislature?
I do, and I also think, I think this is really a decision that should have been made in the legislature, and people are going to start to see that.
Well, Katie, thank you for the question. And it was originally in Virginia made in the legislature, but I think what we're seeing now is that the Supreme Court has ruled that it's unconstitutional, and so that we can no longer ban gays from marrying. So they're interpreting the law, but they have to also interpret that through the Constitution.
I think she's talking about the Affordable Care Act.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it applies to both.
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Same principle.
Thank you very much for your call, Katie. During this past week, Virginia has found itself in the middle of a debate about Confederate symbols and images, all of this coming in the wake of the shootings in Charleston, South Carolina. The governor has already moved to take the flag off of license plates. What do you think is the right thing to do here?
Well, I support our governor, and I understand history and the Civil War and why the Civil War was fought, and it was over slavery, and so we know that the Confederate flag is very divisive. It's a very offensive. There are still a lot of racial tensions in the Commonwealth and also in this country. And so I support wholeheartedly the governor taking the symbol off of our license plates. I think it's time to, and he's done this to help people heal from the wounds and the sorrows, and to really deal with the racial tensions that are there, and to move forward. So I'm happy that he did what he did.
Can I add here, Kojo, that so many of the opponents of the governor's move and others in South Carolina, Alabama, and elsewhere speak eloquently and passionately about the flag representing their heritage. I think it is so incredibly important to take note of the fact that what that implies is that since 1860 whatever, that flag has meant something as it regards that heritage, when in fact that flag went up in the 60s. That flag went up in the 60s as a clear, obvious, in-your-face demonstration of South Carolina's resistance to civil rights legislation.
In general, and school integration in particular, Brown v. Board of Education in particular. I'm sure Vance has said this to people before. I say it to people all the time. Your heritage is literally my slavery. And so the two things cannot exist in the same space.
I spoke today, this week, in doing stories about this to both the spokesperson for the Sons of Confederate Veterans and to, I want to make sure I say his name, like Jim Whaley. I'm sorry, I can't remember his last name, who's a 30-year reenactor of Civil War matters and plays in the Civil War band. And I met him on Fairfax County at the Battle of Ox Run, whatever, which is right after the Battle of Manassas. And he acknowledged that the flag, which, you know, actually even in the 40s, it started to be waved, but principally in the 50s and 60s became a symbol of resistance. He said that he recognizes that it's been co-opted. The flag has been co-opted by hate people, by white supremacists. But he says he looks at that flag, which was briefly flown as Robert E. Lee's battle flag, as honoring soldiers, not anything else about it, but just the people, Americans who fought on the wrong side or maybe on the losing side. And so he felt heartsick that the flag has become that symbol. The problem, as Jim just points out, whatever you think about the flag, it has become that symbol. And it wasn't even the official flag of the Confederacy.
It is what it is. And, you know, symbols are so incredibly important in our society, and I guess always have been. But I, for one, am a man who's been abundantly blessed by everything that America has to offer. And I find it difficult, and I don't know why I should. I get a tremor. I feel something when a truck rolls by, a car goes by, whatever. I go by somebody's house and there is a Confederate flag there. That symbol does not represent the overall goodness and wholesomeness of America. And it causes people, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, to fear. And I'm not sure why any of us should have to live under something
Governor,
like that.
Along 95, just south of Washington, I think it's Stafford County, there's this huge 30 by 22 foot Confederate flag on private property. Governor McAuliffe told me this week that, you know, he can't tell people on private property what to do. The NAACP has urged that flag be brought down. I suspect you would like to see it brought down, but is there anything the state can do as private property?
No, Tom, I agree. I think I would certainly encourage those folks to bring it down again in hopes of healing some of our racial tensions. But it is on private property. We have freedom of speech in this country, and so there's nothing that we can do. I think on a state level to make that happen.
I know we've talked about this, but I talked to the Sons of the Confederate Veterans about the emblem that's on the state flag that's now being removed. And they point out that not any person can get this emblem. You have to be, there's only 1,600 of them in the state, and you can only get it if you can show heritage lineage, to being relatives of people from the war. That's the only way you can have it. And they say that's why there's so few of them. And they say there are pro-choice and anti-choice abortion tags, and they're just wondering why they can't be there.
Yeah, I would hope it's you don't see it very much because it's so divisive, and the majority of people have chosen not to put it on their license plates. But I trust what you're saying.
One more license plate question comes from Sydney. Don your headphones, please. Sydney is in Bethesda, Maryland. Sydney, your turn.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for taking my call. My question regards to license plates and the removal of the Confederate flag. I just wanted to know if you think this will actually cause more hate.
If there's going to be such a pushback, Governor, that there's going to be more, I guess, racial and other kinds of tension in the Commonwealth.
Well, and it's certainly something that we're aware of, and I hope that this is something that we can remove the symbol, and there may be a little bit of an upswing in people's emotions, but hopefully they'll be controlled, and then we can move forward.
But there are. The governor was also asked this. There are, Richmond was a seat of the Confederacy. There are monuments, there are streets, there are schools, and there's just any number of things. The Confederate War Museum, I think, is in Richmond also. Should there be, he said that he's not interested in changing those things. Those are part of history. That's part of our heritage. And nobody's waving a statue in racial hatred at people. He says that's not going to change. But do you see that now the state will be facing even more efforts to change Lee Highway and all these other places?
I think that there will be questions about it, and there already have been. But I think back to Jim's point, that is, right on the mark. Those statues, the names of roads, are really not in your face. People waving this in a racial tone, and so I think the flag and the license plates is a good first step, and then we'll obviously be open to further discussion.
The flag and the license plates might be the easy part. Let's talk guns. Virginia also, unfortunately, is no stranger to tragic violence following the Virginia Tech massacre of 2007. The state examined its own policies on gun laws and mental health. Has Charleston shown any new light on what can be done in Virginia or elsewhere in the country? Is there an opening for an honest conversation about guns in Virginia?
We have been having an honest conversation, as you know, for years, and all we're asking for, Kojo, is in these discussions is our common sense changes and reforms, and the first place that we need to start, and by the way, would have hopefully prevented this tragedy down in Charleston, but is universal background checks. I think close to 90% of Virginians agree that that's the right thing to do, and as you all know, this gun was given to this evil person down in Charleston by his father. No checks were taking place. He had a record, a felony record, and so again, the answer to your question, they're tough discussions to have, but we will continue to have them, and again, hopefully make some common sense changes.
Can I ask another political question?
No.
No.
Oh,
You can ask it anyway. Why did she even bother to ask me?
Lieutenant Governor, you could run for re-election if you wanted to. If you were the Attorney General, Mark Herring, you could run for re-election. But in Virginia, since 1830, you can't run for re-election in successive terms as governor. You have already said, not announced, but said you're going to run for governor. How are you and Attorney General Mark Herring getting along? Because everyone thinks he's going to run too. Is this good government?
It is good government. Mark and I were seatmates in the Senate. We're good friends. My intentions are to run for governor. I don't know what his intentions are. He hasn't made them known to me, but I suspect that he's looking at his options as well. But, our intentions, both of us right now, are regaining our majority in the Senate in 2015, and some of the things that I've been working on with healthcare and with mental health and with early childhood development, I want to continue to work on those things. So
that's a campaign speech right there. This election's in 2017.
Why I'm trying to take the next step.
Should the governor be allowed to succeed himself or herself in the state? It's been discussed for 20-something years, maybe or more. First of all, why does Virginia limit the governor?
Well, I think they should, Tom. The reason that it's limited is because the power right now is in the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the Senate. And I don't think that they're in any mood to relinquish any of their power right now. So that comes up every year, but it gets put on the shelf.
Can I go back to your original question about guns and ignore Tom's diversion?
Thank you.
On this?
Politics.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, but politics and more. I own guns. I love the smell of gunpowder. I used to hunt a lot, and I learned a long, long time ago that there are two things that I will not discuss or participate in a hunting camp. One is gun ownership and the right to own guns, and the other is religion. There are issues and topics in this country today on which people refuse and seem unable to find common ground and or agreement. For the life of me, I cannot understand how any gun owner, how anybody alive could not find it practical, reasonable, correct, whatever else you want to say, that anybody who owns a gun ought to have a background check, ought to have a license if necessary. There's licenses for everything that we do today. Why not with a gun? But having said that on this air, my email box will now be filled with that issue more than anything else that is discussed today. that I have.
You're
anything to
restricting
do.
sales, man. That's what you're doing. You're restricting sales. Before you
Hold on,
go,
Red Meat.
Gary in Sterling, Virginia has a question about transportation. We can't discuss Virginia without talking transportation. So,
No.
Gary, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Kojo. Great panel. I'd like to say we need to use satellite computer technology to subsidize, prioritize, analyze, and design our infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, because the system we have now is not working. I got a $37 million interchange out here used by 1,500 people a day. Route 7 and 15 interchange was underbid by 165%. You can check with VDOT on these numbers.
Okay.
Route 28 and Route 7 was underbid 123%. And it's both of those.
How do you think computer software would help to improve the system?
It would give us a better design. And like take that $300 million road that Governor McDonnell was going to build that didn't get 1 foot of asphalt laid. We spent $300-some million on it. The only people that are profiting from this are the corporations, the politicians. You know, it's a whole thing's a sham. I mean.
Okay, allow me to have a politician respond, Ralph Northam.
Yeah.
What ultimately is the solution?
Well, you know, I think we're making great strides, and there were some misadventures in the previous administration, and just the 460 project is what he is referring to down on the south side of Virginia. And, you know, we've got a great Secretary of Transportation, Aubrey Lane, who is very open-minded. He's working well with the localities. I know we have significant challenges here in Northern Virginia, also in Hampton Roads. And so what we're looking for is transparency. We certainly want people like Gary's involvement in the process. We want to work with the localities, the local leaders, and also, you know, address the funding issue. How do we pay for these projects as we move forward? Do we use, you know, private funding? Do we do this through state funding, or do we use a combination of both? And so all of those options are on the table. And the bottom line, for economic development in Virginia, we know that people need to get from point A to point B. Goods need to be shipped from point A to point B. So as we promote economic development, transportation is certainly a top priority in Virginia.
It seems like that's the top issue. It's if you can't get to the job or you can't get home from a job. American Legion Bridge, Governor McCall says in another 10 years, it literally will start to be unsafe. Do we need another crossing from Maryland to Virginia? He says Maryland won't even talk about it. You guys want to talk about it?
Well, we certainly be open to it, Tom. And again, I would certainly want to work with the local representatives and have their input regarding that.
Ralph Northam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here with you, and certainly it's an honor and a pleasure to meet Mr. Vance, and always to be with Tom as well. Thank you.
Mr. Vance and Tom.
This is a guy who only has
Vance
a part-time
Tom,
job these days.
And that part-time is good enough, don't you think? After all of these years. Thank you, Ralph. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's Mr. Vance and Tom.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Always been that way, Tom. I'm sorry.
You're listening to the Politics Hour. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Jim Vance is our guest analyst today. He's a news anchor for NBC4. Larry Hogan, the governor of Virginia, announced Monday that he has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and that it is advanced, but the doctors say that does not mean it is incurable. He was diagnosed at a late stage, but he's going to have 18 weeks of treatment with chemotherapy once every 3 weeks, and he is fairly confident that will help him to pull through.
When he announced, he was upbeat about it, joking that his odds of beating cancer were probably better than his odds were to beat Anthony Brown in the governor's race. But his eyes were...
Anthony Brown didn't think it was that funny.
Well, yes, his eyes were quite serious. And he's got a lot of work to do. I mean, this 18 hours of chemotherapy. I wish the lieutenant governor was still here because he's a doctor. But it's going to be a tough thing to do. Lieutenant Governor Rutherford will be called upon on a number of occasions to sit in for him. He said it's not going to be easy. He joked about losing his hair, but this is going to be a debilitating effort to save his life.
But as I think I recall recently, in the last couple of days, it was announced that it is in fact stage 3 and not stage 4, which
because it's not in the bone marrow.
Is not going to his bone marrow. We had on our air, if you may recall, Tom, yesterday or the day before, a woman who has suffered the same issues as the governor, and who is thriving now. And she was there to offer evidence that it can be beaten. And she, of course, along with all the rest of us, are certainly praying for the governor that he will beat it.
The governor has had a change of heart, it would appear, on the purple line during the course of his campaign. He said he would be opposed to it, but he gave tentative approval yesterday to the purple line, albeit a slimmed down version of the purple line. He wants Montgomery and Prince George's County to pay more money for it, but this is a major shift in his position. Of course, at the same time, he said no red line light rail project in Baltimore. He says that's a wasteful boondoggle, and as expected, he's going to be increasing spending on roads and bridges by a lot in the coming years, but the purple line is definitely a change for him.
I don't think the governor endorsed the purple line. I think he said, if you guys want it, you build it. The original, here's the deal, and I don't know if the federal government's going to even go along with this. The original plan was for the state, and this thing has been discussed since 1988, but the original plan was for the state to invest $700 million. Yesterday, Governor Hogan waved the green flag and said, oh, by the way, our contribution is going to be $168 million. He cut $532 million out of the plan. So he's in a very good position now. He'll be able to say, I didn't stop the purple line. You guys didn't fund it, so we didn't build it. It's a remarkable political move. Some would call it a ploy.
The old bait and switch routine?
He said he endorsed something, then he said he wouldn't fund it. You ask anybody, that doesn't work.
Also, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Governor Hogan's father was a very successful, very clever politician, Larry Hogan, the former county not commissioner, whatever it is.
Executive.
And also county executive, and also a member of Congress. That was a very clever political move. You know what? I've changed my mind. I'm evolving. So I'm not going to say an absolute no to the purple line. And as you said, Tom, earlier, as a matter of fact, if you guys want it, pay for it. Now, of course, the council members from both Montgomery and Prince George's County are like, are you kidding me? We can't come up with any more money to find enough porta potties. How are we going to find money? You know,
Ike Leggett in Montgomery County says maybe they can do another $50 million more on top of, I think, the 200, whatever it is.
Prince George's County says,
and then Prince George's. I mean, they're trying to capitalize on the schools and all the other things they need to do. And if you talk about the purple line, which would go from New Carrollton to Bethesda, they've already got a stop in Silver Spring. It's an amazing thing. They built a building there with a stop for a purple line that's not yet approved. There's a lot of discussion about the economic benefits. Some of the opponents say it's environmentally terrible, and that the problem with transportation is north-south, not east-west.
And the bottom line is this thing is no closer to happening today than it was 2 days ago.
We're talking, if it gets built, it'll be 15, 20 years from now.
Well, I'll tell you one person who is enjoying this purple line conversation, because it means that we're not talking about DC Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department.
So you guys talk on.
Is Gregory Dean. He is the chief of the District of Columbia's Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department. He joins us in studio. Gregory Dean, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
If you have questions or comments for Mr. Dean, you can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream, ask a question, make a comment, or give us a call, 800-433-8850. Send an email to kojo@wamu.org or a tweet at Kojo Show. You have been called on to lead the City Fire and Emergency Services Department. It's going to involve putting out more than a few figurative fires inside of your ranks. An audit that was published last week found the department has failed to implement reforms that go all the way back to a deadly episode in 2006. How is this guiding what you feel you need to do in your new job from day one? You came from Seattle.
It's a great opportunity.
Washington.
It's a great opportunity for the organization to be able to demonstrate to the public that we serve that we're prepared to go forward. And so we're using the report as one of the kickoff tools. DC Fire has over 186,000 runs a year. and they do an excellent job. And we have some high profile events that are requiring us to be able to reassess how we do business. So we will be doing that. One of the first things we're looking at as I come in is we're running our vehicles 24 hours a day. We can't keep up with the maintenance. We can't keep up with training. Is we're going to look at ways to be able to slow the vehicles down so that we can provide excellent care by making sure that the men and women are properly trained to be able to provide that service.
Is that a matter of buying more vehicles?
No, it's not.
It is not.
No, I think the vehicles are there. It's just a matter of we get stuck at hospitals trying to figure out how we improve the drop times, and there's lots of ways to do that. And we're going to be looking at those alternatives to be able to free the vehicles up so they can stay in their district, and also so that if we can slow them down, we can start dealing with the maintenance problem on the vehicles as well as dealing with the training.
There's 186,000 runs by the fire department, ambulance and fire.
Yes.
And I'm told 80% of your runs are medical, not fire. Is that right? 80,
yes.
More than 80.
Yes.
Maybe.
You know where we're going here. Yes.
Yes, we do. I've had.
I'm the only one left out on this one. Yes.
Why does a major fire truck have to respond to a personal injury call? I see a fire truck arrive, I see an ambulance arrive, and then I see somebody in a little Jeep arrive. Is it just to keep them running because there aren't enough fires to keep them busy? Why do they come?
Well, again, so for every city, not just Washington, D.C., fire stations have been strategically located that helps in response times. And so having that nearest unit go to determine what the patient is and what the patient needs are, that's really where we're headed. We may be oversending the number of units, but we're going to be looking at that also. And we'll be
Why
looking
not
at
have
You're saying that's
Jeep?
because
Why
fire
not-
stations are more strategically located
Yes.
than hospitals.
Yes.
But I've never understood why you can't have in modern day technology a Jeep, a properly outfitted Jeep that can get through traffic even better than an ambulance can to get to a non-fire call.
So we have ambulances also, but the advantage to cities is that you're utilizing all the resources you have. So you have that fire truck sitting there. That fire truck, again, there's only 20% of the calls are fire. Is that what are you going to do with the other percent of time with those people? They're trained emergency medical technicians. It's a great opportunity for them to respond immediately because they're strategically located throughout the city. And then ambulances can go and will go because there's that many calls coming in at the same time. But it's utilizing all the resources. The nice thing about sending a fire truck is that if it turns into something else, they have their toolbox. The fire trucks are toolboxes. It's a great opportunity to use those toolboxes.
Chief, can I get to the real deal, nitty gritty of what you have already stepped into? We were talking earlier about issues of 2006. Going as far back as I can remember, fire chiefs in the District of Columbia have had a devil of a time because of enmity, resentment, outright hostility with members of the union. I'm sure you have been warned of that, alerted to that issue. I'm curious to know, are you concerned about the history of the relationship between the fire union and administration over many, many years here in the district?
Well, I think it's important to know the history, but also I think it's important when you start brand new relationships to give them an opportunity to grow. So I've been meeting with the unions. We've had nice conversations. We understand that there may be times we agree to disagree, but it is how do you work with people? And so my responsibility coming in is to develop those relationships with the goal in mind of how do we provide the best care to the residents that we serve. So internal issues should not affect the services that we provide to the residents, whether it's EMS, whether it's hazmat, whether it's fire, technical rescue. Being able to be professionals means you should be able to separate those differences.
Should be able to, but it's...
But throughout all the fire chiefs that we've had, whether the chief be white or black, there have been racial concerns, given the heightened concerns about racism in this country. What are your own thoughts about the racial underpinning of the fire department used to be segregated like lots of things, but what is your own feeling about where the racial problems might be in the department? Is that just an undercurrent? Is that an overcurrent? Where is it?
Well, I think fire departments mirror society. We have the same issues that we have in society. My job coming in is to lead the men and women of this organization. And there are undercurrents, but at the end of the day, my responsibility is to lead them while understanding these are our jobs. This is what we get paid for. And so we need to be held accountable, but you can't hold people accountable until you're assured that you've given them the proper training. When it comes to race relations, I lead a mixed group of people. I'm responsible for each and every one of them. And so getting caught up in, whether you're white, you're black, is not going to afford me the ability to provide the proper care to the one job that I do have that does not matter what color you are, is how do we provide the best service to the men and women of the, to the residents of this district.
Let's be specific. The city auditor's report concluded that among the most significant unaddressed issues is cross-training firefighters and paramedics, creating so-called dual role providers. That, according to the post, was a pivotal recommendation after the death in 2006 of retired New York Times reporter and editor David E. Rosenbaum. You came here from Seattle, where
Yes, I did.
department is set up in a similar way, with emergency medical services merged with firefighting. You have a reputation for improving your departments in cardiac care. Why has it been so difficult to implement here? One of your predecessors, Adrian Thompson, said it's the culture, because historically white fire service makes employees indifferent to treating needy city residents. They want to fight fires. They don't particularly want to perform emergency medical services. How do you address that?
Well, I think the responsibility of the fire chief is to train all personnel. I have what we call the dual role firefighters, and we have single role. Whoever I inherited, they belong to me. The job is to get people in the street doing their job and being able to do that. First step is, how do we slow those rigs down? How do we then take that time to be able to get our apparatus, and how do we take that time to also start doing the training? Training is the key for everything. It is ensuring.
What is so difficult about doing the training that it hasn't been done since it was recommended 8 years ago?
Because they're on the road 24/7, and that is why you have to start someplace. Until you can slow these vehicles down, and that's what we're looking at, is what are the tools we're going to use to slow these vehicles down. How do we do that? And you asked about the Rosenbaum. So I've met with him the first time I came to the city. I've met with him recently. I met with him again today, as we talk about how are we going to meet the intent of the report that was done by the task force.
But let me ask you about the staffing, because there's been a huge issue, apart from whether people should be cross-trained or whether there should just be firefighters and emergency medical technicians. It's the issue of the shift work. Chief Ellerby wanted to change to it was either 12 on and 12 off or something like that. Right now, a firefighter comes to the station, she stays for 24 hours and then is off something like 3 days. Is that correct? Do I have it roughly right?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. So he wanted to change it. Where do you see as having the people on duty? Do you want to see a change in the hours?
And did you have that kind of system in Seattle?
I don't know what it was in Seattle.
They worked a 24-hour shift in Seattle.
And they were off roughly 3 days. Because some guys, some of them live out in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, other places in the suburbs. They have other jobs when they're off. And they say this would be totally disruptive to their way of life if you change it. And that they're 24 hours on duty for 24 hours, even if they're sleeping, they're ready to go. And they don't want to have this change to something shorter than that.
So I think you have to put it in. You asked a lot of questions. Let me see if I can get all of them.
Speech.
Okay, let me.
Chief, you'll learn that.
I'll learn that.
Welcome to the show.
Let me see if I can get back to it. The number of hours a firefighter works, there's been a lot of shifts. 24-hour shift seems to be the most popular shift that firefighters work. And we use DC and Seattle, for example. The save rate in Seattle for cardiac witness cardiac arrest is 62%, highest in the country. So it's not the shift. We're really talking about training. We talk about where firefighters live. And again, whatever the rules are, if the rules say the firefighters have to live in the city, they live in the city. The rules do not say
Congress won't allow the city to have that rule.
So again, it's hard to hold that against them as we do other people. So then the issue is, what hours do I care that the firefighters work? I don't. What I care is, when you're here, that you're able to perform your job and your task. So if we decide that by looking at this, they're unable to perform their task after we do all this training, that the 24-hour shift is still a stumbling block, then we need to come back and take a look at that. But we should start with getting these men and women properly trained, and we can't do that until we can get them off these apparatuses so we can do some training.
We got an email from Marie Drissel, who is known to everyone else in this room and who you will get to know pretty soon if you're here long enough. She's a local activist. Her email says, do you get minute-to-minute reports on response time? Could you make them available every day to the public?
What we can do, and I asked that question when I got here also, is can we create what we call a real-time dispatch page that allows people to see where the units are going and what's going on. So we've been talking about it. We'll look and see what we can do to address that.
Because you know, I always know where my Uber car is. I can see where it's coming, and I guess people would want to know, why can't the fire department do the same thing?
Yeah, it's called real-time dispatching. So
they want to know, is there an app for that? I guess.
Exactly right. Or create one. Here is, put on your headphones, please, Sarah in Washington, D.C. Sarah, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
I have an answer to why a fire truck arrives when an ambulance does, or even before. Having been a person who was taken away in an ambulance, I know how important the fire truck guys are. The firemen go around the house making sure your oven's off, that your bathtub's not running. They're the people that, while the med techs were doing all kinds of, EMTs are busy doing various medical things to me. It was the firemen who found my wallet so I'd have my health card when I went to the hospital. They're enormously important, but I mean, for safety's sake, to make sure your house is safe to leave. It's very important to have firemen there.
Had you thought about that, Sherwood?
I think about everything, and also if you have vehicle wrecks, automobile wrecks, then of course there could be fires. I mean, there are any number of things. You don't know what's happening until you get there. So I understand part of that. It just seems to me there could be a smaller vehicle rather than these lumbering trucks, something an emergency response vehicle, short of an ambulance and not as big as a fire truck. But that's just my view. Look, can I go to something else?
No.
Fireworks.
Here we go.
He's going anyway.
July 4th. July 4th. Maryland, I think it's Maryland, state Maryland bans fireworks, period. The district limits fireworks to no projectiles, something that can't go more than 10. I don't know what it is in California, pretty liberal out there, probably no fireworks, but it's always dangerous. People get hurt, people get injured. It's a busy night for you guys, busy weekend for you guys. July 4th is on a Saturday. It's going to be big time fireworks in this city.
What are your concerns?
Well, here's my advice, and then we can get back to my concerns. My advice is this: leave the fireworks to the professionals and come and see all the shows that are going on, and that keeps people safe. The 4th of July seems to be the one day out of the year that we say it's okay for little kids to hold sparklers and everything else that has a heat range of 1,200 degrees. We don't normally do that. So I'm of the belief that fireworks are beautiful. They bring everybody together, but they're meant to be done by the professionals.
Your concerns?
My concerns are people can get hurt. House fires, it'll be a long night. Everybody loves to manage their own fireworks. A lot of times we mix that with alcohol. So I would recommend that we lead fireworks to the professionals and teach our kids the fire prevention and fire every day of the year, not the 364 days out of the year.
There are people who tell me that they can't sleep at night until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because the fireworks are going off in the neighborhood.
People mistake it for gunshots.
911 is flooded with calls. The police are running around trying to, see what's happening, but they go off and then they're gone, and so are the people who shoot them.
Well, can I speak something to? No, it's okay.
Relax. He is going to speak truth to power
because
he knows we've all done this.
I'm going to speak in terms of experience. Every single time I drive south or come back from the south, and I have relatives down there. So
we're in the south, we're below the Mason-Dixon line. You're in the south right now.
Tom, I know where we are. Will you shut up and let me talk for a second? Every single time, how you have all of those fireworks stands,
right.
All up and down West Virginia. I think you have them all along the highways. And there is no inspection, thank goodness, I think, at the state line when you cross the Wilson Bridge or whatever else the case may be, to determine whether or not you have contraband, which I guess fireworks would be, in your car. People are free, in practical terms, to bring fireworks in, to move them about as they choose. I'm not sure how a chief of the fire department is going to have is ever going to have a moment to relax as long as those things are available in other states. It's almost like guns. You can go Virginia, almost anybody, and buy any kind of gun you want and take it any place you
It's
do
like
want.
Maryland and Virginia trying to stop the booze traffic out of Washington because booze was so much cheaper in the district than it was in the suburbs. So all of it's dangerous, but you'll be on all hands on deck, I guess, for 4th of July.
Starting on the 3rd, we'll be all hands on deck.
As I said, I have to confess that when my own kids were kids, we did do fireworks in the backyard. They were all bought legally, but all of a sudden, as I get older, I suddenly think it's much more dangerous than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were dissatisfied that the lieutenant who was accused of failing to help a dying man outside a fire station last year never faced discipline or termination. In what ways do you think this department suffers from a lack of accountability?
Well, I think I can't answer the accountability question. What I can answer is this, is that we've just hired a brand new medical director, Dr. Juliet Saucy, who's going to oversee the medicine side, ensuring that we get the proper training.
This is the position Chief Ellerby, your predecessor, got rid of or didn't fill.
Okay. Well, there was a doctor there when I got here, so there was a doctor, medical doctor here overseeing it. But again, it's the training. We start with training. It's followed by our holding people accountable for the actions, and that means a review by the doctor of cases, a review by the department, and some in this case here, it really is a review by the department, not the doctor, for the actions of that member, and then what steps need to be taken to deal with that.
Chief, have you, forget the union leaders, have you met with the rank and file? Have you had coffee?
You got about 30 seconds.
So I go into the fire stations once a week, spend about 3 hours talking to the men and women that are in the fire station.
How do you feel about it?
I like going in there, and it gives them an opportunity to ask, and it gives me an opportunity.
Can we come?
To tell them no. It gives me an opportunity to tell them where I'm coming from and what my
Gregory Dean is
expectations
the chief of the District of Columbia's Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department. Thank you for joining us. Jim Vance is our guest analyst today. He's news anchor for NBC4. Always a pleasure. Tom Sherbert is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nandi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo Nandi Show, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan greenlights the Purple Line as long as the counties pay more and the state pays less. Then at one, airline profits are up, but passengers feel squeezed. The economics of flying as the busy summer travel season takes off. The Kojo Nandi Show.